Principal at Magoffin County High School, and I have two of my teacher leaders with me today, Jennifer Howard and Kate Bailey, who's passing out a draft form of our problem of practice. We have one other member, my assistant principal, that couldn't be with us today, Brian Conley. When we began looking at a problem of practice for Magoffin County High School, we wanted to find something or create something that would help us to streamline the work that we have to do. And like many other schools, we're concerned with reducing novice and then in turn increasing proficiency. And in looking at that, we feel like there are a lot of things that go on in schools, a lot of things that we do, and many of those are listed within the table. But sometimes we don't think that we have a common language, or maybe that everyone understands everything across the school, that there's total consistency. So what we have decided to do is to create something that will be a lasting effect, something that can be used 5 years down the road. If there's a change in administration or as we change in staff and hire new teachers, that everyone that's on board will know this is how we do business at Magoffin County High School. So our problem of practice is, what are the pieces of a playbook that should be emphasized to increase proficiency, reduce novice, and therefore improve school culture? So our long-term objective or goal here is to have guidance for reducing novice and increasing proficiency. And this year, we're going to create a playbook. We have not decided yet if that playbook will be in paper form or if it will be electronic and have tabs. We're just now in the process of working on it. But the 4 areas or the 4 chapters that we have deemed important at this time are professional learning, communicating with families, student ownership, and assessment for learning. So basically our approach with our team is going to address all 4 of those areas that we feel are important for reducing novice and increasing proficiency. And I'm going to let the teachers talk some about each of those different chapters.
I'll talk a little bit about professional learning. That is one of the areas that, of course, that we identified that we needed to kind of streamline and put into our playbook. And one of the first things we realized that we needed to do was to develop some sort of protocol for our PLCs. So with the help of people in our district, we developed a PLC protocol. In that, our administration in our school, our principals are always present at our PLC meetings. We have a standard, like the protocol that we follow, so that all departments are kind of doing the same thing across the board. We have a common language, that common format to follow. With that, we have things that within our PLC built in. We have parent contacts. We run fail lists every 2 to 3 weeks, and within our department we call parents, all students who are struggling. Some other types of professional learning that take place, micro-credentials. We talked about the importance of that, the importance of being able to kind of tailor-make the kind of professional development that you need as an individual. So within your department, within your PLC, you can talk about the type of learning that needs to take place for the growth of your department. And I know so oftentimes as high school teachers, we go to professional developments that maybe really aren't geared for high school students or even toward your concentration, your area, what your content, what you teach. So we talked about the importance of that. We're participating this year in Advanced Kentucky, which is a 3-year participation where we have 10 teachers in our building that go to professional trainings in pre-AP and AP curriculum, hoping to increase rigor in our schools. So those are just a few of the things that we've done. We have novice reduction coaches providing CSIP guidance and novice reduction trainings for our school. We worked on some curriculum alignment, so just a few things like that. I'll let Jennifer talk more about communicating with families and assessment for learning.
With our assessment piece, we realized that there is no way that we can get kids where we need them to go without knowing where they are. So our big important part of our work will be centered around how we can effectively use formative assessments that are specifically tailored for each content. We're going to be researching what's best for the math classrooms, what's best for the science classrooms, social studies, all the different content areas, and making that a part of our playbook. We are now focusing every Monday. We get a memo from Mr. Meadows. It's our Monday memo, and at the very beginning of that memo, we have a formative assessment strategy that's very general for the entire staff to look at and see if that's something we could try for the week. We are looking at just basically using our formative assessments to track and monitor our students. if we are tracking and monitoring our students, both of us are playing around with some tracking and monitoring of the learning targets within our units. My students are dating the learning targets as we learn them. Research shows that as kids track their own data and their own learning, that there's a higher yield on their achievement. So we are kind of experimenting with that a little bit in our classrooms right now, so that may even be a part of our playbook. With that, we are trying to get some ownership with our students with that, and he'll talk about student ownership in just a second. Within this formative assessment, we are really hoping that our kids do some self-assessing as our teachers are assessing every weekly. At the end of the week, we reflect in my classroom on, okay, where are you? We do standards-based grading in our math department, so we allow our kids to say, okay, if our target check is tomorrow, where are you at? Are you a 3? Have you mastered this target? Are you a 2? Are you a 1? So we want them thinking about their own learning, as well as the teachers using their formative assessments to drive their instruction for the next day or the next week. You can see on there that we're participating in iReady diagnostic testing and Mastery Prep ACT, using that to track the college readiness rates and the predictions for our students so that we can target who may be a little bit behind where they need to be. And we are working within our PLCs to develop remediation plans based upon those results. All of this data that we're getting, all of this tracking that we're doing with our students is allowing us to have good data to communicate to our families. You heard her talk about in the PLCs how we're calling home, how we've had struggled for years on finding a good way to communicate with our parents. At the high school level, the parents, it's just really difficult. Parents aren't as involved. Our kids are more independent than the elementary kids. So within our playbook, we are really trying to outline a way, okay, when you do call a parent, here's what the steps that we need to go through. Here's what we need to communicate. If you can't get a hold of them, what are you going to do? Because our phone numbers change in Infinite Campus. Very often, our parents are getting these phones, and the next 2 months later, that phone number does not even work any longer. So we're trying to develop a consistent way if we have a student who is failing, and how we're going to communicate with them, what type of form letter we may come up with and put in this playbook. That will all be developed. And I think that's about it. You can see on here we are still working on that communication piece, and within our PLCs we are definitely working on the common language of what we will do within our grading practices also when we communicate with our parents.
To wrap it up, she had mentioned that I would talk briefly about student ownership, and that will be briefly because as we worked through this, we highlighted where each of our things fit based on these 4 chapters of this playbook to create like a dashboard effect, just so we could see where we were the weakest. And we were the weakest in student ownership. We felt like that our community partners that we have listed, which are only 2 at this point, could really assist us in student interest, because Kiwanis has expressed an interest in getting Key Club back in the school, and so we're looking at student interest, and we know that if we increase student interest, that will also increase what they do academically, because they need reasons to be there. But what I would ask from you all, if you're giving us feedback, what ways are you seeing student ownership in your schools? Because that's where we probably have the biggest struggle at this point. That's where we had the least amount to put on our chart. So if you're seeing ways that your schools have increased student ownership, what ways are they tracking their own data? I try to visit successful schools maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and I have seen that successful schools are using a method of student data tracking where they self-assess and track. So if you have a means of doing that you think would be worthwhile sharing that on your form, we would definitely appreciate that, because that would be the biggest struggle for us right now, but we know it's so important it needs to be included. Are there any questions or comments?
Did you notice the buy-in from your teachers with this playbook, or did they feel like it was another thing to add to the play, or is there buy-in?
We feel like that there's buy-in because these are things that we have to do anyway. Now, I think if we were coming up with a project and it seemed extra, because that was my goal from the beginning, we don't need anything extra. We've got a lot to do. We need to find ways to streamline that and do it more effectively. So I think when you approach people with we're going to do this because these are things that we're doing anyway or that we have to do, but we're going to do it in a way that will make it easier, then I don't think people object to that, but nothing extra at this point.
My question is kind of related to hers, and it's the time issue. How much time do you spend in the PLCs weekly?
Once a week, one planning period a week per area. Yeah. Now, this team meets after school some to kind of pull things together, but
It is content specific.
the plannings are, yes. We have content-specific planning for all grades but the freshmen. And the freshmen, it's grade level because we have the BAR program also through KVEC, and they're doing a team approach and tracking many more things other than just academic for them. It's working really well, by the way. I think we had one freshman failing about a week before the 9 weeks ended. My assistant principal is the bar coordinator, affectionately called the bartender by some of the teachers. If he were here, he'd talk more about that with you. Are you familiar with the BAR program, Building Assets, Reducing Risks? It's a good program.
Thank you all.